Alright, so now I'm going to get started on the armor, and I'm just going to be going for a more of a top-down process. So rather than just, going bit by bit, I'm just going to start from the fur all the way down to where I feel like going. So let's get started. So, of course, if you want a color plan, that's fine with me. However, it's also good to also look at, areas of reference. So, for instance, you may not you may decide that, you don't know what colors to use, but you have a reference sheet that you have that show kind of colors that you really want. So, for instance, this is a gold armor color, and I'm just pulling up my reference here. This is more mainly silver with a bit of gold. Even stuff like this you can use as reference. So I'm gonna go for more of a silver and gold because I feel like that would fit more with his stature in general. So yeah, let's get started. So if I'm gonna go silver, I'm gonna choose whether if my if my grays are going to be cool or warm. So these are my prismas. This is my 72 set, by the way. So when it comes to cool and warm, this is what it looks like. Cool versus warm grays. Cool grays have a more bluish tone to their grayness. Warm grays have a more browner tone. So depending on what kind of type that you want to use, it's up to you. I think I will end up using a cool gray with cool silver because I want the gold to stand out. So if I have a warm gray, the gold will not stand out as much. So I'm going to be taking my cool grays plus white plus a bit of a tint of cloud blue. So let's first start off with our whites. So I'm just going to be coloring everything except for maybe the emblems, white. So this will probably take a while. Actually, I should have started with the fur, huh? Let's think. I could make the fur dark, and that could actually hold a nice contrast. So what I'm actually going to do first is I'm actually going to start off with his fur. So I like to make sure that the fur will contrast with my my armor nicely. So I'm suggesting that this would actually probably be like a nice dark color. So let's think. I will think of using a 70% cool black, sorry, not cool black, cool brown with a bit of brown. So I have a dark umber here. So I'm going to first start off with a dark umber. And I'm just going to be coloring this in first. So using the side of my pencil, I'm going to be coloring this in. Lightly. So just kind of just block it all in. Make sure you use the side of the pencil. And of course, if your pencil starts getting dull, sharpen it. I sharpen mine. I pre-sharpen mine before the videos because I don't want to show you guys all the loud noise. So far, so good. So same thing on the other side. Make sure you don't use the tip of the pencil, use the sides. So once you have that all colored, I'm actually going to bolden this a little bit with a 1. I'm going to bolden this because it's kind of getting lost in the armor. There. So you can see that by adding a little bit of darker line, that it pops out a lot more. And I'm going to do the same thing around the collar because that's pretty substantial here. There. So now I'm going to take a cool gray or a warm cool. This is a warm gray. What the heck was I doing? Sepia. That's not a cool gray. Oh well, this looks cool, but for some reason this says warm gray. Maybe that's a typo. I'm just going to be coloring over on top. So with grays like this, or with furs like this, you don't really add too much highlights. And in fact, the highlights when it comes to darker values tend to just be this middle tone itself. So usually the darker areas would be like a very dark marker, for example. So I'll show you guys soon in a little bit. So I'm going to cover this all with a gray. And notice how by adding the dark umber first, it already gives the gray tint. So rather than using a plain old gray, you use an undercolor. Now I'm going to be using a dark brown. I'm going to be marking, actually no, not that dark brown. I'm going to be using that dark umber again. And I'm going to be, marking areas of shadows. So areas like, the inner parts of the fur coat, underneath some areas here. So once I have marked it all out, then I'm going to take a black. Is this a black here? This is an indigo blue. Do I have black in this set? I don't think I do, unless I suddenly find it. If anything, probably the darkest black I could find is probably a dark brown. Or, yeah, I think I will continue using my dark umber because that's pretty much a very, very dark color that I have. So I'm just going to be shading in the areas that I marked. So as you can see, this is where I marked, so you can see the difference. And don't mind me, but I'm going to go ahead and sharpen this, so hopefully this isn't too loud. While I'm on a roll, I don't like to pause and suddenly, do all that, but this is an exception. So, color in the dark undersides of the fur. That's usually where shadows would be cast because, it's going over his shoulders, not upwards. So I'm just going to be doing the same thing on the other side. So once we have the darks, we can go ahead and blend a little bit more. I'm going to add a little bit more darks along this area because it feels like it needs it. If you want to add some texture, you can go ahead as well and do that. I like adding texture in between the light and dark areas, just around the middle tones, just because it kind of makes it look a bit fluffier. So I like to stretch my shadows just a little bit. There. So far so good. That is our dark fur. If we want to add a little bit more intensity, we can go ahead and take our number 1 and just add some pitch black darkness along the inner parts of the fur. Make sure the pattern stays the same. But this is not really all that necessary. I just like to add it for the extra punch. So, yeah. I'm also going to add a little bit of that outline as well, because it's quite a thick material, so I want to make sure that that stands out well. There. So that is the fur. So we're 9 minutes in, which we still have a good amount of time. Let's go in with our whites now. So our whites are just going to be around basically the whole armor. And I'm just using this as a base, of course. I'm not coloring the whole thing white. This is just so that the colors can pop out. So the emblems will be gold, and maybe like the ridges will be also gold. So it doesn't hurt to actually put a little bit of white just to give it a step ahead. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and sharpen this. Sorry, I thought it was going to be the only time. But hopefully that this isn't too loud, so pardon me. Since we're doing a whole wide area of white, this is going to take a bit. So this undershirt here is going to be black, so I'm just going to be filling this in simply with a number one here. There. So I'm just going to color everything in here white. Very, very lightly, by the way. Let me move my color pencils here so I don't get distracted. There. So as you can see, all this process is very, very much the same. It's block in, layer in your colors and do some darks, do some lights, and you're pretty much set to go. So once everything's pretty much masked in, which is another word for filled in, I'm just going to do the armor. I'm not going to do the cape. I'm just going to do the top part of the armor. Then we will go on to the next step. So let's do his gauntlet as well. So actually this is, sometimes I underestimate male illustrations. Not really to categorize them that way, but when I draw guys, I don't tend to enjoy them as much as I do with girls, just because that's just my preference. I like drawing girls more, but this is actually pretty fun so far. So this is a bit of a new thing that I do. So we have this all in silver, which is pretty gallant. Then we are going to be coloring in our golds first. So I'm going to be taking a canary yellow, a yellow ochre, a lemon yellow, a sand, and then for some darks, we have sienna brown, burnt ochre, dark umber, and that should be good. Oh, and a dark brown. So we'll use these for our gold. So let's first start off with our base, which will be a lemon yellow. I'm going to be coloring in the emblems here. Because this is so bright, it fills in pretty nicely. I'm going to be coloring everything with this yellow as a start. Coloring the rims here as well, using the side of the pencil. So this looks pretty harsh right now at first, but later on when we add in more of the values, it'll start looking more cohesive. So all these little details here that I'm coloring in will be gold. So you can see that I'm using this gold as an accent rather than everywhere. So I'm just only using areas that I want to show that are, just a little bit more fashionable. But everything else will be balanced out with the silver. So because we're doing cool, warm colors when it comes to these gold pieces, it makes sense to make the silver a little bit cooler so that the gold pops out more. I'm only using my lemon yellow because I like to use light and then go dark. I'm also going to do his gauntlets, or his knuckle areas, gold, and the ridge here, gold. So once we have that pretty much done, we can go ahead and do some detailing. So let's take our canary yellow. I'm going to zoom in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just fill in more of this yellow around these areas here, kind of in pockets. Areas where it kind of curls down. I want to show a little bit of different pigments. Here's the edges. I like coloring darker colors with the edges here, as well as in areas of shadow, so in a way I kind of block them out. Around the edges, around the corners. Around the bottom, because the light is kind of going in front, so usually when things are going down to space, they kind of get darker. So the more it's facing away from you, the darker it'll be usually. That's just kind of like more like ambient occlusion, which is where light doesn't hit. So once we have our canary, let's get our yellow ochre, and let's kind of fill in these areas with a nice color here. That's just to kind of give it that more of a metallic color. So we're not adding darks yet because that'll be for later. We like to add lights first, just so we don't have to deal with the darks and try to color over that and everything else. So kind of go in strips. 1, down here as well. And on the sides here, just to kind of show that, this is turning into space. So I add a darker color there. I usually like coloring the details first because then I don't have to worry about the big areas where I accidentally color in the detail spot. So I add this first. There. Alright, so now let's go ahead, let's take our burnt ochre now, and let's actually start putting in our darks. So I'm adding darks kind of in a streaky way. So here, here, underneath the little details of the ornament. As you can see, by adding it kind of in a streaky manner, it starts looking more metallic. So as you can see, by making it kind of streaky, it starting to look more like a metallic brass. Adding some streaks as well here. You can kind of color more opaque here because most of the color is pretty much based in, or the color base is already in. As you can see, it's starting to look a little bit better now. Look more like gold rather than just straight up yellow. So add any areas of creases with shadows. Add some darks. Areas where it's kind of like lower, I like to add shadow because it's kind of like the light is facing upward and then there's a shadow down. Alright, so we're almost done here. Now let's add our darker darks, which is let's take our dark umber, and now let's add in our really extreme darks. So I usually like to add my extreme darks next to my medium darks. So areas where my burnt umber was, or sorry, my yellow, my brown, what's it called? My burnt ochre was, I'm going to add a little bit of this dark umber here. I'm not going to add too much of it because I don't want it to overwhelm. I probably did a little bit too much around this area, but it's okay. That happens. Usually when it comes to gold, there's like extreme darks and extreme lights, but don't do too much of it. I'm only going to do a little bit on each side, just around the edges here, just to kind of pop it out. So I like adding it around the edges because it kind of gives it that like nice edge. And adding that shine really just gives it a more metallic look. Where it bends, I like to add, and where it creases, I like to add shadow. If you want, you can also look at some reference on how metal works, and that'll be good. You know, you can even do studies of it, you know, do studies of armor, if that's what you want to do. See how it reflects in space, and the like. Actually, I forgot to add a little bit of this burnt ochre here. So I'm going to add that real quick. And I'm going to add in my details here. There. So that is our gold, and I will finish off with that first, and then we will go ahead and do the rest of the armor. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, before I tune off, I will go ahead and color in the rest of this area here. Anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.